In this demonstration, we'll be doing a little repair job on this damaged photo. It was previously scanned and it came from, I guess, a basement that got flooded or something. And there's a lot of damage and stains, as you can see here. And it also has what we call dust and scratches in there. So we're going to clean all of that up. And we'll also do a little bit of a touch up on the face to make it like a magazine cover treatment and maybe punch it up a little bit in color. Okay, I'm going to show you sort of a finished version right here. I have two files open, and we will pretty well take it to this state. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is save this file as a new file. So let's just go File, Save As. And let's see here. I do have a spot that I can save this digital imagery. And just save it as your last name and lesson number. Now, I'm not sure the real number, but I'm going to guess 04, maybe. And .psd. And make sure under Format that you actually choose Photoshop. Okay. And I'm just going to save that right there. And that way, too, I don't overwrite my original file. So it's still tucked away on the hard drive. Now, to start with, to play it safe, I'm going to duplicate my layer. So I'm just going to come over here to my layers and right-click, duplicate layer. It'll also allow me to compare. I can turn the layer off and on to compare my progress. Okay, so I think we'll tackle sort of the big stuff right now, which are these brown stains in here. And we previously learned how to use blend modes to affect things and not completely paint over them. So we're going to do that again today. And we're going to start with our brush tool. Now I'm just going to go up to my brush settings. For this stuff, I would like my brush to be very hard edged because I'm going to need to go around the blouse and it's all very hard edged. So make sure hardness is set to 100. Not going to worry about the actual size because I will be using my left and right square brackets on my keyboard next to the letter P to increase and decrease my brush size. So I'm just going to click here to close that. And as I said, brush size right here, like that. So what I want to do next here is make sure my blend mode is set to color. Now, I think I had it set to color when I tried this earlier. And just make sure that's on color up there. So what that means is when I apply color with the brush, it will just change the color, but not the texture, not the tone. So step one in this is to actually sample the color here. So I'm just going to go and hold my Alt key down on the PC, Option key down on the Mac, and go to one of sort of the darker colors over here in this background and just click it with the eyedropper, then let it go. And I am going to make my brush quite large. Okay, and I'm just coming down here, and it's this big sweep. I can catch most of this. Now, coming up to the blouse, I will zoom in, use my space bar to move around, and make my brush reasonably sized here, and come around and be careful around here. Okay, and then just grab those little bits that I missed over there, and I go back out to that zoom level again. And you'll see I'm constantly changing my brush size with those square brackets on the keyboard. Okay, and I can come around here again in big swatches. I think I'm going to sample the dark blue over here. It seems a little darker on the right side, so I'm going to come in and grab that one and then continue here. Okay, and if I did go too far, I can just undo. Or I can also go to my history palette. Let me just remind you about the history palette here. It works in conjunction with the history brush, and I want to paint back in time. So I'm going to choose this as 2 steps ago. I can actually look at it there. It's before I went over the line there with the blue. And I'll go to my history brush. And I'm just going to paint back in time. There we go. Okay, so that's your history palette in conjunction with your history brush. Just a little reminder. It's a very handy power tool. And go back to my normal brush and continue with this painting with my blend mode set to color. Okay, again, I can kind of go fast here in these big areas and then just make my brush a bit smaller and be a little more careful where the sharp edges are. I do recommend short little strokes because if you have to undo, it's less undone. Okay, again, I will open up my history palette right here and just go back 3 steps with that check mark. I just went over the line here a bit. Oh, maybe it was a longer time ago. Let's go back all the way to there. There we go. Catching a bit of the past. All right. Just going to save as I go here. Now, we'll do the same thing with the blouse. Okay. So go back to my regular brush tool. And when you're dealing with something that's predominantly white, it's recommended for sampling. Sample the darkest color you can find in there. Okay, like that. And again, large brush. Well, maybe not that big. Okay. And I'll catch that edge with a smaller brush and come back to it. And you can even just click, right? Especially with a brush this big. And the edge is sharp on it. Okay, so I'll make it a bit smaller and just come back to this shoulder here. There we go. Save. Now let me show you a couple of tools that you could potentially use to kind of clean up this background. I did get the color, but let's say I want to get rid of these lines. These are actually artifacts from the stains. These different lines and these dust and scratches. There are a few tools we could use, but I'm just going to show you a couple of them and you can sort of decide. First of all, there's the clone stamp tool. It basically samples and paints with the sampled area. The one thing to be concerned with, I guess, with this tool mostly is this align checkbox. So I'll leave it aligned for now. I will go and set the brush parameters here. I'll make the hardness a bit harder. And while I'm here, I guess I can slide this down, but I'll probably be changing sizes here. Yeah, I'll just change the size here. And you can sort of see already what it's doing is catching part of the image. So the way this works is you set a registration. So I'll use the eyeball as an example here. I'll click there and I'm holding my Alt key down or my Option key on the Mac to click here to sample that as my start point. Okay. Then when I move away, you can see here with the preview, as soon as I click, it's painting with that. And if I click over here, right, it's kind of part of that imagery. Now it's painting like that because it's aligned. Let me do a couple of undos and show you what you get when it's not aligned. So unchecking aligned, I'm going to sample that eyeball again. And if I click over here, you see how it starts over? And if I wanted to catch more of the image, I just click and drag to kind of paint more from the original sample point. And there is a little crosshair at the original point that you can see there moving around. Okay, so that's unaligned versus aligned for the clone stamp tool. And the reason I'm showing you this tool is I'm going to come back here and make the hardness low. It's going to have a soft edge. I could conceivably come in here and sample. So clicking with my Option key on the Mac here, Alt key on the PC, sample over here, and come and sort of paint a section over here. This random background lends itself to that. I could even bring my opacity down to even make it more subtle. For example, let's go here, Alt click over here, and if I wanted to kind of cover this with what I have up there, it's kind of resampling, right? Use that, you know, with limited care. You don't want to show patterns. I am going to undo that and show you another tool that I'm going to use. But that's the clone stamp tool, okay? There's an awesome tool here called the Spot Healing Brush tool. It is very powerful. I'm going to show you that, and then its close cousin, the Healing Brush tool. Okay, Spot Healing Brush tool is almost like an auto detect. Let me make the brush size a bit bigger here. It kind of looks at its environment, and it will blend kind of the environment over where you're painting. And so it's going to be a very subtle approach. When you first paint, though, it creates a dark area, and then when you let go, you see the results. So let's say I want to get rid of this line down here. And this tool does work best with short strokes or just clicks. Look at that. It is pretty good like that. And if I don't like these spots here, I can literally just click them out. And it just imitates that randomness of that background. Okay. That's a powerful tool. That's probably the one you would want to use the most. Even with these dots, these scratches. Just clicking. I'm just clicking in here. And it's cleaning the thing right up. Okay? Even over here. I want to break this up a bit. Now, if I want to be specific, though, the first cousin or the close one here, Healing Brush tool, it's a sample and click again. And it does a similar thing, but it does kind of reference where you sample from. So let's say I hit my Option key on the Mac here, and that's my sample point. Alt key on the PC. I can come up here and it will do a subtle version of what the clone stamp tool does. Okay. So I'd like you just to clean the background up, fix the colors, all right, and I'm going to zoom into the face. I'm going to say the commission here was that the client wanted to get rid of the lines on the face as well. So I'm just going to go back to both of these tools, but I'll start with the healing brush tool, spot healing brush tool. Make it very small. And again, short little strokes. And I say start where you want it, almost like if that's what you want to imitate from, start from there. If I wanted to get rid of those lines, see that? And it's seamless. So don't start from here and go out, because it does look a little weird. Start from the outside and go in. And it's a judgment thing, right? You'll have to look at what the image is and kind of determine this. So even though this is a long line, I would probably just go with a couple of short little strokes here. Okay, and here maybe I'll come from the top. All right. So I'll just have you do a little number on the face as well. This is the healing brush tool. Again, if I wanted to be specific about something, I would just, or this is the spot healing brush tool. If I wanted to be more specific, I could use the healing brush tool and kind of create a sampled area. So let's say down here, I'm going to sample that spot there, and I want it to be more like that over here. I can just kind of brush along there like that. Okay, and see how it averages out. The preview is not quite exact. It does a more subtle job than what it shows there. So let me just turn off that layer for now and show you what it looked like before we started. Okay, so it's all subtle in a way except for the brown stuff, but it is distinctly professional. You can't really tell. Right, I'll just make this centered here. Like that. Okay, I am going to save again. So I'm just going to do one more thing to this, and we're just going to give it a little bump. I'm going to use what's called an adjustment layer. I could come in here, because I have been working in what's called a destructive mode by actually affecting the pixels. And the reason for that is these pixels, I actually did want to change them. Okay, I didn't ever want to revert back to what it was. So having said that, I will use an adjustment here. I'll show you here. Under here we have adjustments. And there's this one called levels, and it deals with darks and lights, and in a way contrast, but it's not exactly the same as contrast. It deals with midtones as well. And on this, I would say, just as a quick little fix, just hit the auto button. Like that. And check that out. And if I click OK, again, compare the two. And that is using image adjustments, and in this case, the levels. Okay, so if I undo that, there we go. I can show you a different way to do that that's less destructive, and we will be repeating this next feature in upcoming lessons as well, but it's called an adjustment layer. Okay, so we'll just go down here to the little icon. It's a circle. It's half dark and half light. And that gives me the list of the various adjustment layers. So adjustment layer is a special kind of layer. And I'm going to choose the one called levels. And you'll see it here, and it shows up with its properties in the panel here. So this layer affects all elements below it. So what I want to do is I'm just going to click the auto button here and do a quick fix like that. And it does the same thing, except I can turn that off and on. So I haven't really committed to it, right? I'm turning the visibility off and on. Now, if I only want it to affect the layer below, in this case it doesn't matter, but a lot of times you will only want it to affect the layer directly below it, because by default it does affect all layers below. For example, if I turn that off, it's affecting the original, even though it wasn't that contrasty. Okay, you just come in here and right click, and it's create clipping mask. The other way to do that, I'll show you here, is with your Alt key down or your Option key on the Mac. You go between the lines and you'll see the symbol appear. That's the shortcut. Okay, that's the same as going create clipping mask, and here I could release it. Okay, so I'll do that with the right click again. Create clipping mask. Now that, if I turn this layer off, you'll see it's not affecting this layer 2 layers down. Okay, so in this case, I'll let you decide if you want to commit to the image adjustment this way or use the adjustment layer, because we will be reusing this in another lesson as well. Okay, so that's our little lesson on creating touch-ups, fixing colors, fixing dust and scratches, and so on. And, you know, changing some appearances, like we took some of the lines out of the face, and they're very seamless. So just a way to manipulate our image again, and in this case, a practical approach, repairing an old photograph. And that is our exercise on repairing a damaged image.